I arrived back in the United States October 2nd with 1,250,000 feet of film, uncut. We went to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer in Culver City. We had 4 editors, 4 teams of editors. We worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We finished the movie. We got it in the theater December 21st, and we won the Academy Award for film editing, and for sound effects. That's the best time I've ever had making a movie. And I'll never have a time that's that good again, because I love the sport so. This is something I wanted to do with my life, and in the next life, I hope I am a race driver.
One of the things that Frankenheimer was very, very good at was the dynamics of the car and how to photograph the car. In terms of the camera angles and the clarity of the shots, it stands up to today's technology, no doubt about that.
The camera car was a Ford GT40, which was a Le Mans-type racing car of the day, capable itself of 200 miles an hour, being driven by Phil Hill, who did a lot of work in the film. He appears briefly and has a couple of lines. Of course, he was a brilliant driver. He was world champion a few years before for Ferrari.
The idea was put the audience in the car. We fooled around for months, experimenting with various places to put the camera and with various lenses.
When we first started testing lenses and cameras and trying to figure out just the best look that we were going to have on Grand Prix, we would be trying out different vibration-proof mounts and ways of dampening the vibration that you would get in a camera mounted to a race car. And we found out that by not using any vibration-proof mounts and just locking it to the car and going with a certain amount of shake and jiggle and everything that the camera would give you, and make the picture look twice as exciting and it looked real.
One of the clever things Frankenheimer also did was the use of very long lenses, which gives you a great feeling of speed, particularly when you're panning, and some of the shots are even a little bit soft because the lenses are so long, it's just hard for the guys to hold focus. And then great shots of cars and long lenses coming straight towards camera, and that's where it was innovative.
In the mid-60s, Formula One was very much more laid back. There weren't the huge commercial interests. But even so, when John Frankenheimer's crew and actors and hangers-on and makeup artists and all the other people you need.
These are the Cinerama cameras of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, about to attempt one of the most challenging feats in motion picture history. The most illustrious names in Grand Prix racing. Driving the MGM camera car, former world champion Phil Hill, and the 1966 Grand Prix champion, Jack Brabham. Guiding this multi-million-dollar production, the sensational young director, John Frankenheimer. For Frankenheimer, for any filmmaker, this is a monumental challenge. Less than an hour before the actual race, he is staging his own start. The crowds are real, so is the excitement. And for Frankenheimer, the suspense is very real. This is not a studio. These are not stuntmen. In just seconds, Phil Hill in the camera car will lead Garner, Monte, and the others around the Monaco circuit at actual speeds of over 125 miles an hour. 16 specially designed and mounted Super Panavision Cinerama cameras are ready to record what is about to happen. Garner reviews in his mind the vast amount of racing knowledge he has had to acquire in the last 6 months. Montan waits tensely. According to the script, he will win this race. But at these speeds, there is no script. Sabato is ready. And the crowd waits with an excitement that matches, perhaps even exceeds, the thrill of the real race. Something goes wrong. Within the maze of electronic gear that winds for miles along the circuit, there's been a breakdown. Find it, fix it, improvise around it. The responsibility rests with Frankenheimer alone.
Okay, very good.
Are you ready?
Now, you tell me when you want to set the first group off.
He's ready again. The cameras are rolling. And they're off. The Grand Prix de Monaco, staged by director John Frankenheimer, filmed by the MGM Cinerama cameras, is underway.
And it's Sarti in the lead from Stoddart, Aaron, Hulme, Anderson and Randall. Stoddart's throwing level with Sarti up the hill. He's going to overtake him. Now it's Sarti in the red Ferrari, number 17, leading. Past the Hotel de Paris and into the Casino Square.
Sarti sur Ferrari. Deuxième le numéro 12, Stoddart sur BRM. Troisième le numéro 11, Hulme sur BRM également. Nino Garlini, après un mauvais départ, a repris 2 places.
I don't know how he did it, but we made it work, and we'd have to hand it to Frankenheimer for pushing and pushing and pushing people to their limits to get it done.
He had a reputation for always doing it the most difficult way possible because of his search for reality.
I felt he definitely broke ground, that he made the commitment to film real racing under real conditions.
We followed the real race, so you didn't get a chance to do it 3 times.
And at first I thought, oh my God, the sound, the noise, and I don't like anything going fast.
To be going so fast and working so close to these race cars. Every second you're on the edge of something happening.
Bear in mind, all we'd ever seen were black and white 2D foggy photographs in newspapers, and suddenly we had 3D Cinerama of a lap of Spa. It was absolutely mind-blowing.
A great love of mine has always been cars. And I wanted to, from an early age, I wanted to be a race driver. I was in France directing a movie called The Train, and I went to Le Mans, and I saw these people at Le Mans screaming enthusiasts, and I went to the Formula One race at Rouen, and I went to other Formula One races, and I realized that I wanted to make a movie about Formula One racing.
Well, again, John wanted everything done real. He wanted the races photographed as they took place, and he wanted to be able to use the real track, the real people, the real cars, all of the other drivers.
The difficulties were huge, but the rewards were great. And we were able to get a tremendous feeling of realism into the movie because we actually were filming the real events, and we were able to film the real events and then cut our cars right into that. And we sent all our drivers to driving school. James Garner was a great athlete, and he came out of it a very, very good driver. Yves Montand came out of it very well, as did Antonio Sabato, and the only one who didn't was Brian Bedford, who couldn't drive at all, and we had to double him all the time with, and it turns out he drove better than anybody because we doubled him with Phil Hill and Jochen Rindt and Richie Ginther and great race drivers, and we put a face mask on him.
The Grand Prix de Monaco is about to start. Frankenheimer knows better than anyone that this is it. There can't be, there will not be any retakes. More cameras than have ever been used before will film it. Because of the cost and complexities, it is unlikely that a film like this will ever be made again. The staged race is over, but the filming is not. And now, in the relentless pace that director Frankenheimer must maintain, just before the real race begins, the cameras record the human drama of Grand Prix that will match the action drama thrill for thrill.
Ça suit là, s'il vous plaît, un autre coussin.
Close as you could get at that time to what racing was really all about.
side by side down past the pits. Barlini's going ahead. He's unbraked Brabham into Eau Rouge, and it's number 7 Ferrari in third place up the hill.
When the film starts, what Frankenheimer could easily have done is shown you Brian Bedford putting his earplugs in, or they could have shown you James Garner putting his gloves on. But in fact, you see Jochen Rindt, you see Phil Hill, you see the real drivers. And that instantly makes you understand that this is a film that is going to be as close as possible to reality. What makes Grand Prix so brilliant is that when we see the 66 Belgian Grand Prix, it is the 66 Belgian Grand Prix. It's not some stupid race that they've created. It's a documentary apart from anything else. We were used to seeing Hollywood's efforts at making films about motor racing, and we were used to sneering at them. This was a film where real efforts had been made to make everything accurate.
His main quest was for realism, and that's why I think Grand Prix isn't dated at all, because you have this feeling of it actually happening.
Along the seafront, as the tobacconist, it's Sarti's red Ferrari ahead of Stoddart's green BRM number 12. As they finish the first lap, it's Sarti first, Stoddart second, Aaron third, and fourth now is Barlini's Ferrari, number 16. Number 17, the Ferrari of Jean-Pierre Sarti, is still in front, but he just cannot get away from number 12, Scott Stoddart in the BRM. And the second BRM driver, number 11, Pete Aaron, is only 3 seconds behind, with Nino Barlini in number 16 Ferrari breathing down his neck.
Premier Sarti Ferrari, deuxième Skoda BRM, troisième BRM, quatrième.
25 laps gone, 1/4 of the race distance. And as Sarti and Stoddart fight for the lead, they're leaving Aaron and Barlini behind. Stoddart's really pressing Sarti. The Frenchman is usually unbeatable at Monaco, but today the Englishman is faster on some parts of the circuit.
Everybody was very, very skeptical of another movie being made about racing. As a matter of fact, to the point where Ferrari didn't want anything to do with it. He just said, you go make your movie. It has nothing to do with what we do, and you can't use the word Ferrari in this picture. And that was pretty much the attitude of all the drivers.
Most of the drivers at first didn't like the idea at all. John Surtees driving for Ferrari and Bandini with Ferrari, they weren't too happy with it. Jackie Stewart was not happy at all with it.
There was all kinds of various feelings for and against this going on. Was it corrupting our sport, or was it?
Well, my first reaction was that let's hope they do a better job of it than they've done in the past. Because, at that time we'd never seen a racing film that meant anything for the drivers.
When you first run against a big Hollywood person, you're just kind of interested. What's he like? Is he going to make us famous, or is he going to take what he can and run? You have no idea.
There was an enormous amount of talk going on. A lot of the mechanics said they couldn't get on with their job because there were cameramen and wires everywhere. So there was a general kind of faint feeling of disapproval that Hollywood was interfering with what was then thought to be a very European sport. Frankenheimer had an amazingly good brain for racing. When it came to detail of badging on cars or colours or the way drivers were putting their overalls on, all the detail, Frankenheimer was in charge of it 100%. And I think that shows how much actually he loved motor racing.
Scott Stoddart has 27 points in the championship, exactly the same as Jean-Pierre Sarti. In the lead with 28 points is Nino Barlini, while Pete Aaron has 26. In just 2 hours, one of these men will be the new world champion.
5 secondi.
He can't get away.
La macchina non riparte. Go away!
And the leaders are onto the banking for the first time, with Barlini's Ferrari in front of Stoddart's BRM and Aaron's Imura. Then Brabham, Gurney and Scarfiotti. The orders Barlini, Stoddart, Aaron, Brabham, Gurney, Scarfiotti.
me, Scott. Are there any particular problems in driving on the Monza banking?
A banking? It's just so damn rough up there that the car flicks all over the place. We're never below 180, you know. And at that speed, your reactions can barely keep up with these sudden changes in direction. The trouble is, the high centrifugal forces push the car into the banking and use up all the suspension movement. So what you're driving becomes a car with no springs. It feels like you're getting a series of punches in the back. I hate it. I'm sick of pain. But it's what the car is suffering that really worries me. Because no matter how the car is set up, it bottoms at several places on both bankings. The underside of the car just comes crashing down onto the biggest bumps. Everything's shaking and banging all the time. Sometimes you could swear the whole thing's falling to bits.
I think it began when he was a little boy, practically. There are pictures of him driving the family car down the driveway. And then when he was at Williams, he would come home every weekend, and as he said, it was the Taconic Parkway Grand Prix every weekend for him.
I always loved cars. And then when I got a little money together, I started racing, club racing. And I realized that even in my wildest dreams, if I had started doing this when I was 12, I didn't have the talent to be really a guy like Phil Hill or Jimmy Clark or Jackie Stewart or Jack Brabham, the guys that were the big Formula One drivers at the time.
None of us like Monza very much. It's so damn fast, and when we run so close together, it requires fantastic concentration and rather special skills. Slipstreaming, for instance. At speeds reaching 180 miles an hour, a race car is making a big hole in the air. And as the car goes through, the air rushes back into the hole and creates a hell of a draft. A draft strong enough to pull a following car along at, 10 miles more than his usual top speed. Yours is the last car in a bunch. You can get a terrific tow. You can back way off the gas pedal and maintain the same speed. Then you can put your foot down, pull out of the slipstream, and maybe overtake 2, 3 cars at once. The only thing to do here is to drive just as fast as you know how and hope your car doesn't break.
It was interesting looking back at the making of this movie that there was this tremendous competition going on between Warner Brothers, with McQueen basically, and MGM with Frankenheimer. And Frankenheimer wanted McQueen for the role of Pete Aaron.
It's never really been totally clear to me what happened. He had this disastrous meeting with my partner. It's a meeting that I should have been at, and for professional reasons I was doing something else, so I said to my partner, you take the meeting with Steve.
And so he sent Eddie Lewis, and apparently Steve McQueen and Eddie Lewis hated each other on sight. And Steve McQueen suddenly decided, to hell with John, he was going to do a Grand Prix movie.
I don't think Frankenheimer wanted me. He didn't want anybody that had an opinion. Anyway, the studio wanted me. So I think I was inherent in the deal.
And Frankenheimer went along with it, and then we got along pretty good, Frankenheimer and I, except for a couple of points.
There's Scott Stoddart completing his 30th lap and increasing his lead over Sarti. And there's the third man, Barlini, in his red Ferrari, now well clear of Aaron. And he's just lapping a slower car. That can be tricky here at Monte Carlo. It's almost impossible to pass unless you can rely on the driver in the slower car to move over and make room.
Il avance, pas devant lui de boîte de vitesse, qui a l'air de griffer. Il est maintenant au moins à 10 secondes de Barlini.
Stoddart, Sarti, Barlini, Randolph, Aaron.
The cars that were used for the shots that were taking place purely for the cameras on the Mondays and the Tuesdays after the Grand Prix, they were Formula 3 cars which had been dressed up to look like Formula 1 cars, and all the exhaust pipes were correct. All the suspension parts had been made to look correct, so that when they intercut, they really were pretty similar.
And we were doubly blessed because the season was 1966, which was the first year that they went to the 3-liter formula from the 1.5-liter formula the year before, so the manufacturers were changing the look of the cars every week.
The fact that Frankenheimer refused to use doubles and made the actors do the driving simply underlines how determined he was to make the thing work.
I was watching you on the first day here, and you didn't look too happy then. You're looking a bit happier now, I notice.
Well, it wasn't a matter of happy. I think it was, or unhappy. I think it was a matter of concern. Naturally, we want to know that the guy next to us is capable, and I want him to know that I'm capable. In other words, it's a very dangerous thing, I think, for actors to do. And it's a very dangerous thing for drivers to do, to sit in a car next to an amateur.
At the end of the 5th lap, Barlini's in the lead by 5 seconds. Now both Stoddart and Aaron have lost the Ferrari slipstream, and they're dropping back in their great dice for second place.
Arundel è andato fuori strada sulla parabolica. Spaghetti lo passa. Arundel sembra indenne. C'è olio sparso sulla pista. La corsa continua.
Coming up the main straight now is number 4, Jean-Pierre Sarti's with 10 laps gone and only 18 seconds behind Barlini, after losing nearly half a minute when his engine stalled at the start. With 40 laps to go, Sarti could still catch the leader and win the race.
All the drivers except Garner went through Jim Russell's racing school. And I got these varying reports from Jim each day. And I'd get calls like the following. He'd say, well, the Frenchman, meaning Yves Montand, he said, the Frenchman, he said, is going to be all right. He's not a very good driver, but he'll be okay. I said, yeah. He said, the Italian hasn't got the faintest idea what he's doing, but he may be all right. He said, now the Englishman is hopeless. He said he can't even shift gears. So Brian Bedford, in reality, never drove in the picture. He was always double. Garner, we put with Bob Bondurant.
The studio got in touch with me and said, we'd like you to do a little training in these cars. I said, fine. And they assigned Bob Bondurant. They gave him to me for 2 months before the film, and we went out to Willow Springs. And I drove 2 or 3 different kinds of cars. I went in with the fact that I don't know anything about racing. I don't know anything about driving. And what Bondurant taught me was a lot.
I thought Garner did an excellent job of driving. He got smooth, he got going fairly quick. If he was in a real race, he would have been able to beat several drivers. In a Formula One race, that's saying a lot.
You know, we'd go a little faster, a little faster, a little faster. And then he would go to the corners and he would look and see you're not going in deep enough there or you're going in too soon. We'd build up the speed and build up the speed on each lap until I found out that's about my limit. And it was pretty close to his, too.
I honestly believe that if Garner had decided he was going to do this as a young man, he could have made a very good career as a race driver. He was that good.
There's Stoddart now. He'll let his BRM teammate Aaron next time round. Stoddart's driving a tremendous race. And he's broken the lap record again. 1:29.3. Which means he ought to move over and let the faster car through. Let's
go through! In those days, the teams, aside from Ferrari, really didn't have that much strength. So we were smart enough to go to Carroll Shelby. And Carroll Shelby kind of embraced us. And through Carroll Shelby, I got to Dan Gurney and also to Phil Hill. And then, the year before we made the picture, I went around to all the races, and I signed these guys up for 2 years, exclusivity to movies, to me. They still did not really believe us as being anybody to be taken seriously. As a matter of fact, we were a terrific inconvenience to them because we had track time just before their practice. We also had a big unit in situations where we got in the way.
Let me speak about you as a director now. You're generally admired by the people who work for you as a director. Yet your methods are fairly forthright, and you can be quite rude. Do you find that by keeping things at fever pitch, you get the best out of people?
Well, in the first place, I don't mean to be rude. You know, I really don't.
He seemed like a creative guy, and he talked a lot, which fit the image that you might have had in your mind about a Hollywood person. He wasn't shy about spending money, as we could see.
And he had a penchant for using the F word at a time that it wasn't acceptable yet. And he knew that, and he used it for all it was worth until it got to be old hat, and then he dropped it.
Oh yeah, Frankenheimer, he could be a pain in the butt sometimes, but he wanted something done right, and he would keep going until he got it done right.
I'm not implying any criticism here. Your methods of working are obviously your own, and they're obviously vitally successful and have always been successful. It's just that I wondered if this was a deliberate policy, and that the way to get things moving was to shout and scream a bit, and that if you came on quietly, nothing got done.
Well, Alan, look, I became a director at 24 years old, which is probably pretty good. But the whole thing is that everybody thought I was an inexperienced kid, you know, who didn't know what the hell he was doing. So the only way I could get it done was just to say, do it! And I've never stopped that.
John Frankenheimer, to me, was a man of iron. He had incredible nerves. It just wouldn't let things faze him too much.
He wasn't a pushover. He was very strong. And at times you hear, you know, maybe too strong with people, but I didn't have that impression or that experience with him.
He was an overpowering, overwhelming kind of person. So just to see him standing in a room was like, oh my gosh.
He was a fantastic director. And, you know, he was a really professional guy. There's no way he will never get the no for an answer.
I just find that in order to do it, I almost have to do it myself. I mean, nobody's going to do it for me. I had great dreams of a second unit, but it didn't work. So it's going to be a first unit operation. That's it. And so I have to be about 4 places at the same time. Now, the only way I know how to do that is get myself up to a point where I'm capable of doing it. And if it puts people under stress, maybe that's good. I believe in being honest. I certainly would never like to be considered rude. If I am rude, I apologize to anyone that I've been rude to.
People didn't realize about him was that he was very laid back, actually, and had to sort of push to get that adrenaline going. But once it went, it was like a force of nature.
Frankenheimer was tough on people. He was really hard on people. He's a bit of a genius at work. And he was a very talented director. But he ran roughshod over people.
You know, in the end run, my name is going to be on this film. And, you know, an assistant isn't. You know what I'm talking about?
Frankenheimer did the right thing. He just took it by the scruff of the neck and went to Monte Carlo, and that was the first shoot.
It was just chaotic. Not only that, but at that time, half of Monaco was owned by the Grimaldi family and half by Onassis. And so in the days when the Grimaldi said we could close down the streets, Onassis said we couldn't close down his part of the streets. So you could drive about 2 miles on the circuit, and you had to stop and wait till the next day to go. It was really wild.
The bloody idiot! Starty's picked up 3 seconds! You can't blame Pete for wanting to race. Stop with the teammate! He has to let him through!
Yesterday, we had a rebellion. The shopkeepers at Monte Carlo arrived and started waving at the camera because they claimed we were closing down all their shops and everything else. Now, I'm not saying that they don't have a valid point, but the whole thing is that I can't superimpose a title on the screen saying that the reason that these idiots are waving here is because, they didn't like the idea of the picture being made, because they're going to be the first bastards, pardon me, to get into the motion picture house to see the bloody picture, when it opens here.
The company had paid all these shopkeepers and whatever for the time we blocked them off and they couldn't do business. Well, I'm out in a boat in the bay there, and I finally called on the radio and said, "What is holding things up there? I'm freezing." "Oh, some guy wants more money." I got on that boat and I said, "Let's go up there."
I am freezing my ass off. Now get your butt out of here. I'm going to throw you right in the water.
Frankenheimer, who usually is right in the middle of all that, wasn't trying to hold me back.
What is your problem? I am freezing to death out here for a half hour while you talk. How much money do you want?
No, I speak English, Mr. Gus.
Well, then you get the hell out of that shot or I'm going to put you out.
Yes, sir.
That's the only guy I had trouble with in France.
I was in the air in a helicopter, and we were having our own situations with our pilot. His name was Chaumont. He was flying this Alouette 3, and we were chasing the cars down low. We were right just above the water, skimming over the boats, and we had to literally go straight up, and we'd do a hairpin turn and come back down over the track and over all the people. And I guess the officials felt we were getting too close, and some of the people were complaining. Frankenheimer yelled over the radio. He said, "God damn it, Stevens, move your cameras further away." I'm getting a lot of feedback down here. And about 10 seconds later, he says, "But don't move too far back." He was saying this for the officials. So we did. We moved back, and things sort of settled down for a while. And then Chaumont went right back to it again. He was doing it. I guess the crowd got used to us.
John Stevens was in that helicopter. He'd have his feet hanging out on the landing strut. And he'd come in, and he'd have green all over him from clipping trees with his feet.
After Monte Carlo was over, I cut together a quick 30 minutes of stuff I shot at Monte Carlo, called Ferrari, and asked him if he would look at it. And he said, "Well," he said, "I don't have any projection equipment. I don't have anything like that." I said, "Just tell me you'll look at it." So he said, "Yes, I will." So I shut the movie down, chartered a plane, brought the movie, a projectionist, projectors, and everything else to Maranello, to his office, set it up, and ran him the 30 minutes. When it was over, the lights came up, he embraced me. He said, "You can have the team, you can have the factory, you can have everything."
And that's why Dragoni is in the team, the Ferrari team manager. That's why we have really good close-up shots of the Ferrari. That's why there's access to the Ferrari factory, which had never been done before. Whether you're writing a book, a race report, a movie, if you've got Ferrari there, you've basically got Formula One racing. Because without Ferrari, it's not Formula One. And once he got Ferrari, Frankenheimer knew he had a movie that he could make and that would be reasonably successful, even on a bad day.
Every morning, John would get out, and he would say, "Gentlemen, I remind you again, this is a movie, this is a film. It's not a race. And if at any moment you feel uncomfortable or feel that you're going to be taking a big chance, don't. We can always come back and do it again."
Sarti, piena velocità, si sta avvicinando alla Brabham di Hull. Ecco, adesso la passa. Sarti adesso in 10ª posizione, a 14 secondi da Barlini, sempre in testa.
It's not an easy thing to film the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa.
The race started, I'm in the helicopter, and we went along about 8 or 10 miles. Everything just started dicing back and forth. I'm looking through my camera, and all of a sudden I see what looks like a rooster tail coming off behind the cars. And they said, boy, that didn't look right.
By the time I got to the rain, the front of the car could have been in the rain at big time, and the back was still dry. It was that kind of a curtain. I slowed down so much for that curtain of rain, which you couldn't see maybe 30 feet, 40 feet at the most. And Phil Hill, driving the Frankenheimer camera car, went by me. That's how slow I was going.
Gurney suddenly slowed right up. He wasn't about to wreck his car, so he played it cool and slowed down immediately, and I went by him. Even though I wasn't supposed to. We're not going to ruin our shots just because somebody decides they're going to bail out.
I'm looking down, I see these cars spinning out and doing different things, so I keep photographing all this going on, and the cars are going 150, 60, 70 miles an hour, and they're hitting this water, puddles of water. So we kept shooting all the way around the track, and this is where we got some of the most interesting film.
There's Barlini on his 17th lap. His Ferrari's just a bit too fast, even for Pete Aaron's Yamura and Scott Stoddard's BRM. They're in 2nd and 3rd places. And there's a splendid scrap for 4th place, with Tim Randolph in the 2nd Yamura, just ahead of Dan Gurney in the Eagle and Bob Turner in the other BRM.
Seguito da Stoddard, Aaron, Gurney, Randolph e Sarti. Sarti è settimo.
As they sweep round the banking this time, Sarti's going to catch up with the 3 cars fighting for 4th place. He's passed Tim Randolph in the Japanese Yamura, and now watch him go underneath Gurney in the Eagle. Yes, he's passed him, and now he's passing Bob Turner in the BRM. He's 4th. Sarti's 4th. There are 3 slower cars just in front. When Sarti's left them, he'll only have Aaron and Stoddard between him and the leader, Barlini.
Pretty soon, I must have passed at least half a dozen cars that were off, upside down, this way and that way, and then another group of cars, maybe another 4, already in trouble right there.
One by one, I saw cars disappearing in front of me. Bonnier almost went into the upstairs window of the house, and Jackie Stewart further around. He broke his shoulder bone.
I remember coming over the top of the hill, and all of a sudden I'm behind Mike Spence, and all of a sudden he loses it. And then all of a sudden I hit the same thing, and I lost it, went off the road, landed upside down, and stuck in the car, and couldn't get out.
The vast majority of the competitors didn't make it around the first lap. So when I came in at the end of the first lap, the entire pit came roaring down and wanted to say, where is so-and-so with so-and-so and so.
A lot of times things just happen during a race where your camera just happened to be on the right car at the right time and a situation would happen. And then we would go back the following day and actually shoot around that particular accident that we had photographed.
Jerry, it was perfect. Absolutely. Out of everyone. Perfect.
We talked about how do we do these wrecks. We had a great special effects man, a guy named Milton Rice, and he came up with the idea of this cannon, this hydrogen cannon. So what we did was we took the engines out of some of our cars, put dummies in them, and put them on this hydrogen cannon, loaded the thing up, and fired it.
How about the danger? Are you conscious of this all the time, or are you more conscious of getting your right profile in the shot?
Well, no. When you're in a car, particularly a Formula car, but any car, you cannot think of anything else. I mean, if you don't think of going from one point to another, from one your braking point to your gearing down to where you make your turn into a corner, if you stray from that and you worry about where that camera is or anything like that, then you're off the course. So we strictly do not worry about it. We'll do our acting in the pits.
I never felt like it was dangerous, even when we did the fire sequence at Brands Hatch. I did that stunt, and I had 2 bottles of butane in there that were leading to tubes, letting the fuel out. And I just turned them both off as I pulled off to the side, and as I started to get out, it just blew into a ball of fire. I think that's when the insurance company canceled my insurance on the picture. I drove the last month and a half without insurance.
I'm okay.
That's what makes Grand Prix the best movie ever made about motor racing, because you have that wonderful blend of storyline with reality. One of my favourite scenes, in fact, is the driver's briefing at the Belgian Grand Prix, partly because I'd never seen anything like that before, and here was Jochen Rindt sitting there, and there was Bruce McLaren actually talking. I'd never seen or heard Bruce McLaren's voice before until we saw that scene.
Well, they haven't changed the road in 10 years. They're not able to do it now.
I must say, Graham Hill's acting is surprisingly like Graham Hill in real life. You see him celebrating and pouring a pint of beer over somebody's head.
Vuol dire che Starti è morto. seconda. Stoddart in front as they come into the last corner. Aaron and the Yamiura's right on his tail. He can still beat the BRM to the flag. Grand Prix for Yamiura of Japan. And Scott Stoddart in the BRM was second. What a race! What a tremendous race!
It was hard to tell where reality ended and the film began. Lorenzo Bandini walked the circuit with John at Monte Carlo. And John said, Lorenzo, where do you think there would be a really bad accident? Because they had to figure out the place for Brian Bedford and Jim Garner to have their accident. And he said it would definitely be on the dog leg. It was odd because that's where he had his fatal accident. I guess it was a year or 2 years later. Lovely, lovely man.
And we stayed at one point in France, Clermont-Ferrand, and there were a lot of drivers there. And Mike Spence, he had dinner with a lot with his wife and family. And this was going to be his last race because he wanted to have a different kind of life, not that he had children. And he was killed. And so many of those people have gone.
At that time, it was impossible to make a film without bringing death into it because it was so much a part of Formula One. Jochen Rindt was killed in 1970 at Monza. Jim Clark sadly was killed in 68. A lot of these guys lost their lives after the making of Grand Prix. So one has to say that it's true to life in that sense.
A lot of the purists who saw the film when it first came out said this is too sensationalist, there's too much blood, there are too many accidents. Real motor racing isn't like that. Well, the truth of the matter is that there isn't a single incident that happens anywhere in the film that didn't happen at some stage in real Grand Prix racing.
When you look at the 60s in that film, I guess it's the end of the age of innocence, if you like. You look at it now and we appear to be so naive in terms of safety and the risks people took to even just get camera shots and stuff that we wouldn't dare do now.
And it could never be done again. I think Frankenheimer did that at the absolute latest point in the history of the sport because it could never be done now for a million reasons. The teams wouldn't have the time to do it. The drivers wouldn't have the time to do it. But above all, the Formula One industry wouldn't let Hollywood make that movie unless they paid so much money that it bankrupt Hollywood for the rest of time immemorial.
His car home in first place today in the Belgian Grand Prix. Pete Aaron, of course, won 5 Grand Prix in the past when he was with Ferraris, but that was 3 years ago, and he's had a lot of bad luck since then. It's great to see him back in the winning position.
He drove a good race. We'll see how good he is at Zandvoort.
Well, I got to thank Steve McQueen for not doing it and left it open for me to do. McQueen didn't see it. He's my next-door neighbor. He didn't see it for, a year or so. And finally, Chad, his son, made him take it. And I was driving home. I stopped, say hi. And he said, well, we went to your movie. I said, yeah, what do you think? He said, pretty good picture, pretty good picture. Yeah, that's about as much as you're going to get out of Steve.
Every day I'd wake up, I would wonder just what would happen that day that would be more exciting than what I did yesterday. And sure enough, something would come up. And that's what made the picture really the most exciting motion picture I ever worked on.
We knew at the time that it was special. But I don't think any of us realized, because we were very young, and we didn't realize how things were going to change, how much they were going to change. Looking back, it was a wonderful moment. It was a gift.
I think John wanted to really make an audience feel that they were right there doing it, and it would go to any end to accomplish that. And I think that he did accomplish it, and he accomplished it at a time when it was not the easiest thing to do.
Making a picture is a strange thing because after everybody hates you when you're making it. It's when the picture comes out that they say, oh boy, you know, it's really pretty good, you know? Or vice versa, everybody loves you when you're making it and the picture comes out and you never work again, you know? I mean, it can work that way too.